Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another insightful session of CANTO Conversations. My name is Xiomara Wittenberg, and today our distinguished speaker is Mr. Paul Eelens, Chief Information Security Officer and Director of the Cybersecurity Center of Excellence in Aruba. Our topic for today is connecting with confidence, ensuring organizational resilience through ISO 27001 and ISO 22301 compliance. Before we start off this session, I would like to set some ground rules with regards to asking questions. We have a dedicated section for Q&A after Mr. Eelens' presentation. It is going to be very interesting session. It's going to be a very interesting session, and you might feel really eager to ask your questions during the session, but we kindly ask of you to do so after the session. During the session, you have the opportunity to write your questions in the chat box, and we will address them in the Q&A section after Mr. Eelens' presentation. Thank you in advance for doing so. Without further ado, I will now introduce our esteemed speaker. As a seasoned Chief Information Security Officer and Director of the Cybersecurity Center of Excellence in Aruba, Mr. Eelens utilizes years of experience to educate executives as well as engineers on fortifying telecommunications and IT networks. With an MSc in engineering and an impressive array of certifications including CSIM, CISSP, CAH, ISO 27000 Lead Implementer, Fortinet NSEX, there's a lot of acronyms, sorry, and CRIMF. He specializes in information security governance tailored for the telecom sector. His mission is to provide fellow members with the knowledge and tools required to successfully handle the complexities of cybersecurity in IT and telecommunications. Blending theoretical foundations with actionable insights, he ensures that executives as well as engineers are equipped to steer robust cybersecurity strategies during evolving cybersecurity challenges. Now, Mr. Eelens, we now welcome Mr. Eelens, and the stage is now yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for those kind words and a lot of acronyms indeed. I'm struggling to keep them all myself, but I'll start with sharing my screen here. So welcome everybody. It's a pleasure to be invited as a speaker for this CANTO event. My name is Paul. As already introduced, I'm with the Cybersecurity Center of Excellence here in Aruba. This is a little bit of my background. So I have a background in cybersecurity, obviously, but also in telecommunication, and I do a lot of CISO as a service projects at different vital organizations and financial institutions. I get asked a lot of time, yeah, but what does your Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, what do you do actually? So we do three things. We do SOC, which is Security Operations Center. So continuous monitoring of events, incidents, network traffic, EDRs, antivirus, SIEM solutions, all of that stuff. We do governance, IT governance, information security governance, so advisory, CISO as a service, ISMS implementations, those kind of things. And also CERT, which is emergency response. So whenever organizations get hacked, we try to restore the systems, kick the hackers out, and try to recover as much as we can and limit the damage. But definitely try to make sure you get assurance back over your systems and your IT infrastructure. So we have different partnerships. These are a few of them, but we are kind of vendor agnostic. So we work with anything that the customer already has invested in. We try to leverage that so they can get a lot of well, the most security out of the investments already made. So the agenda for today, a small introduction, also why it matters. You know, some management gurus like Simon Sinek, they say, you know, always start with the why. So we're going to start with the why today. And then we get into some ISO 27001 basics and some ISO 22301 as well. If you don't know what those numbers mean, don't worry, we're going to get to that. So all standards of the International Organization for Standardization are numbered, and these are just those numbers. So we're also going to give some tips on where to start, how to approach it, and what the pitfalls would be. And we have an interactive session with some Q&A at the end. So if you just joined, welcome. Thank you a lot for joining, and thanks for CANTO to set this up. So we have a small interactive session as people are joining in. If you would please go to menti.com. You can do that on your computer or on your smartphone if you're looking at your computer. You can scan this QR code. It will just send you to menti.com. And if you go there, you should see a place where you can put a login code in there. And I'm going to start presenting the interactive part. And normally you should see a place where you can put the coding. Let me get the code on the screen. Yeah. So the code is 15672654. Yeah, telecommunications, no surprise there. Yeah. Yeah. We have ICT, telecom, so a lot of telecommunication you can imagine with CANTO. Oh, defense. That's interesting. Yeah. So again, go to menti.com or scan the QR code, get this code in so we can make it a little bit of interactive. We have energy sector also, defense, consultancy. All right, data center. Yeah. All right, just keep those responses coming. So we also have a knowledge of, you know, what crowd we have and what you're doing and why is it important for you. Definitely for telecommunications, defense, I mean, for sure. IT, energy, we all need energy. We all need the power to stay on. Regulators, all right. All right, so we have more and more responses coming in the cybersecurity, telecom. All right. All right. Interesting. Sales. We even have sales data. Okay. All right. Thank you very much for those responses of very important industries there. So what comes to your mind when you think of cybersecurity? So any keywords that comes to your mind, just throw them out here, and we'll see if we can pick some of those up and explain a little bit more during the conversation. So safety, yeah, definitely. Cybersecurity, yeah, vital infrastructure, hackers, integrity. That's yeah, data leakage. A lot of breaches going on lately. There's even something called breach fatigue. So it hits the news, but nobody really, you know, makes a big fuss about it anymore because it's happening so much. Still does a lot of damage, has a lot of impact, but it's happening so much that we just get tired of it. And the news cycles, they stop reporting it because it's happening all of the time. So hack prevention's continuity, glad to see that there. Yeah, ethical hacking, I presume. Yeah, authenticity, vulnerability, being proactive, loss, yeah, compliance. So as you can already see, cybersecurity, information security, that's a big topic. It's not about just implementing a firewall or installing an antivirus. It's about a lot of different factors there. All right, interesting. Thanks for those responses. Now, this one, I'm very interested in myself. So, what is your biggest concern? Because there's a lot of websites out there that say this is the top risk and that is the top risk. But for your organization, in terms of cybersecurity, what is your most concern? What are you afraid of, or what is the most pressing issue that you see for your organization? Yeah. Ransoms. Yeah, there's a lot of ransomware out there. Has a lot of impact because it impacts not only the availability of the system because everything is locked, but now they're doing double extortion. So they'll threaten you to upload everything to the dark web, and then even if you can restore your backups with your business continuity plan, they'll still extort you and say, I'm going to leak all this data and I'm going to embarrass you. So a lot of hacker groups have these walls of shame out there. Yeah. Yeah. Availability is a big thing. Oversight. Yeah. AI. It's a hot topic right now. So yeah, AI, as well as for the attackers, as for the defenders like us, it's a great tool. So unfortunately, also for the attackers, now much easier to create malware. Privacy, that's a very important thing. So often very much underestimated because people think like, hey, I don't have anything to hide, so why should I worry about my privacy? But how free can you be if you don't have any privacy left, right? And how can that be misused, manipulated? So privacy is definitely very important. Yeah. So how many people would be impacted if your organization goes completely out? Let's say ransomware, your whole IT is out. Backups, that's the first thing they want to try to take out is the backup. So let's say 30 days, just gone. You have to rebuild everything from scratch. How many people would be impacted? Everyone? I don't know. There's 7-8 billion people. I'm not sure which organization you are, but millions, many, 100,000s. If you're a telco, that's usually the entire country, right? National telcos. Titanic level. Yeah. Yeah. Try to put some numbers there. Don't be afraid. This is all anonymous. They don't see which organization you're from or anything. So we have millions, 100 and bankrupt. Yeah, 10 small organizations. But also think of not only your organization, but the impact on your customers, right? Or supply chains. So maybe you're an ISP, internet goes down, but the hospital, they have all their patient records in the cloud and they can't connect to the cloud. So that's more people again affected on their level. So definitely it goes to show that being available, being your system working is very, very important. And that's why, of course, we want to implement some measures. So what you see here, unfortunately, is very relevant. Just recently, there's a lot of tension going on in the Middle East. For those who follow the news, there was an attack or a retaliation for an attack by Iran, shooting about 300 missiles to Israel. But, interestingly enough, none of them or almost none of them hit their target, and the impact was very small. And if you look at those missiles, they're rockets, they're scary weapons, but they took them all out, even most of them before they reached Israel's airspace. So if you look at the digital world, we have some honeypots running, and this is just a screenshot of what we are seeing continuously. So that's us, a small island. We're based in Aruba. This is a system that looks very vulnerable, but actually it isn't, and it's just picking up on all the things that hackers are trying to do with it. And we see attacks from all over the place, ranging from just trying to log in to exploiting a vulnerability. So those virtual rockets are hitting us all of the time. So we also need those defensive measures. So we're looking at bots trying to log in with default credentials all of the time, but also vulnerabilities that hit the news. Hey, there's a new update for Cisco, for Fortinet, and those kind of critical warnings. And if you don't patch on time, we see these are being automated and used in attacks very, very regularly. So this is happening all of the time. It's some estimates. It's about a quarter of the internet traffic worldwide is this stuff. So it's really a big problem. And this is not just hitting us because we're a cybersecurity center and we're a juicy target. But in fact, this is just a regular internet connection, just as one that would be in your home or your office, and it's coming from everywhere. Now, these dots you should take them with a grain of salt, because you're not going to launch an attack from your own IP, right? You're going to route that traffic, use a VPN or Tor or whatever, and we only see from where the last node was connecting from. So definitely very, very difficult to attribute an attack. So attribution is something very difficult. You hear often in the news, China or Russia attacked and this and that. It's very difficult to see where it actually came from, and they use some techniques like trying to look for fingerprints, some clues in code and whatnot to try to identify them and link that with groups. So this is something that is definitely happening. It's happening a lot. If you look at data breaches, the last quarter, there were a lot of records breach. And a record can be anything from a scanned passport to a username, password, email, insurance information, citizen ID, things like that. So last quarter, about 30 trillion records with a T, which is, it's mind-boggling how much. We don't even have that many humans on the planet. Compare that to Q4 2023, it was about 3 trillion, which is still a lot. And this major increase is because of the MOAB, the mother of all breaches. Is kind of a breach compilation. So they took a compilation of a lot of hacks, aggregated all of that data, and they're selling that online. And you can, if you know where to look, you can even download it. It's a huge amount of information on a lot of people out there. Why is this relevant? Why is this such a big deal? Because this kind of information is being used for attacks and for scams and spam and automated attacks, social engineering tricks, just to do fraud or gain access to certain systems and etc. So there's really a lot of information. And now with the power of AI, you can easily create scripts that sends an email to each one of them on this list, or try to log in onto every IP in the world using this list, etc. So we're bracing for a lot more of that stuff. Now, business continuity is not only about hacking and not only about information security. You have a lot of other events that can happen. So when the pandemic hit, I know a lot of organizations, they have business continuity plans, and they have everything worked out for all scenarios. And then the pandemic hit, and nobody was really prepared for that. So nobody really had planned for that. Nowadays, that's a scenario that you can have in your plan, and it would make life a lot easier. So we don't need HR struggling to make communications to employees to stay home or not stay home, or debate, whether we can telework. Do we have enough laptops for people to work at home, and what are we going to do, and all of that. All of that stuff could have been prepared with a business continuity plan, but in hindsight, that's always easy to say. But suffice to say, it's not only about hacking, it can also be adverse weather events. In Aruba, we are lucky because we are outside of the hurricane belt. It always seems to be coming to us, and then it just shifts up and goes into Florida, because we're close to the mainland of Venezuela, and storms always try to take the easiest path, so they just pass on by. I do, pity those that are not so lucky as us, and they probably need to make some preparations for that and have that in their continuity plans. continuity plans, these require analysis, risk assessments, and business impact assessments to see what the impact would be. And I mean, funny or tragically enough, if you look at the data, there's more people dying from generator uses during hurricanes than from the actual hurricanes. So if you're, if your goal is to save as much lives as you can, and you look at the business impact assessments, it's probably cheaper and more efficient to do a campaign on prevention of CO2 or CO, sorry, poisoning, which is also what the Center of Disease Control is doing in the US. So a lot of times it's not always logic what the impact would be. So doing those BIAs, those business impact assessments, is often a very good idea, even though it's a theoretical exercise. Funny thing to note, I saw yesterday the latest amendment to the ISO27001, which is a business continuity management system, has a provision for climate change in there. So organizations are now required to, look and see if climate change might be an effect for them. And that seems very far-fetched. But then again, it's not. So if you're running data centers and you have chillers that, require water, I was in Vegas a week ago, and the water levels are getting really, really low. So, and they're saving up on water. So if you don't have water to cool down your data center, that might be a big impact, and you might need to start thinking about that, right? But again, the consumers or users or citizens and people of the world, they should not be worrying about all this. They just want to, take selfies, have fun, look at, use all of the technology available to them, and not worry about them. And they should not worry about that, right? They should just, let us worry about that, because that's our job. To be fair, that is our job. We're running these organizations, these telcos, these vital, these energy companies, and that's on us. We have to provide the power. We have to provide the continuity. And we as organizations, whether you're a manager or whether you work in IT or in HR, or whether you're the CFO of the organization, that is on you and on us to foresee that. So it shouldn't be when a family takes, a selfie on the beach that they need to worry about, is the cloud still working? Is my internet still going to work? And where is all this data distributed? And where is all going? How about privacy? Who has access to this? And are there, doing user access reviews or not? They shouldn't worry about that. That's our job. So especially in the vital infrastructure like dams, IT, financial services, all of those things, we are now heavily dependent on technology. So we need to take that into account. And it's not an easy thing to do. So if you look at what you ought to be doing, it's really mind-boggling, and it's really difficult to see where to start. What scenario should I invest the most time and resources in? To connect with confidence, you need resilience. So you're going to take a hit. Some bad things will happen. You will get hacked. You will get hit. You will, get some power outage. There's always something that's going to happen. But to be resilient, you need a lot of stuff. So you have financial health, viability, HR management, ICT continuity, information security. You need to comply with legal, with audit, with laws. It's about managing risk, managing your supply chain, because you more often than not are dependent on some critical suppliers. So all of that you need to take into account, and that's not an easy thing to do. But the good thing is that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. The wheel's already being reinvented, and it's been improved over time, and it's been continuously improved. So you have the ISO 27001, which is an information security management system, the requirements for that helps you manage information security. And you have the 22301, which is a business continuity management system. And, these two, they seem far apart, but actually they're not. If you look at the standard documents themselves, so if you download them or buy them actually from the International Organization of Standardization, you look and you see a lot of similarities here. And you see that with other standards like the ISO 9000 for quality also. So, you know, there's a scope. There's the context of the organization. So you need to know what assets are important, why is it important, and what are you doing, and who are your stakeholders, what kind of services are you providing. All of that stuff you need to know as well for information security as for business continuity and even quality for that matter. So you need leadership. Without leadership and commitment, resources, it's very difficult to organize things. You need some policy, some rules, some regulations, some, you know, standards that you stick to within your organization. Otherwise, it's just, you know, if you're lucky, they're doing very diligent work, and if not, then it goes completely wrong. So you need to have some baseline, some standards, some policies, some procedures within your organization. So you need to plan stuff. You need support, of course. You need resources. You need competent people or, you know, advisors to help you with that. You need awareness. You need to communicate all of those things within your organization and towards your stakeholders. So you see there's a lot of overlap between building an ISMS and a BCMS. So some organizations opt to do that together. And it makes perfect sense to do that together. Of course, there are some differences when it comes to operations and doing things between those two standards. So ISO 27301, business continuity. So it's planning, recovery, you know, ongoing operation, risk, resilience, procedures. It's about, you know, the business impact of things. You want to estimate what kind of scenarios, what the consequences would be. You want to get your RPO, RTO, so your recovery point objective, your recovery time objective. You need to assess those risks. You need to come up with a strategy. And these standards are here to help you with that. Obviously you need to not just develop plans, but walk through them, do a tabletop exercise, and see, you know, how would you do things in practice, right? So I've mentioned already RPO and RTO. These two are really crucial. And even if you don't plan to, you know, implement the full-blown business continuity management system within your organization, with every project that you do, if it's, you know, about information or IT, or if it's something digital, it's always good to, you know, stand still and say, hey, you know what? What RPO should this require? So what is the recovery point of objective? So how much data can I afford to lose if, you know, systems goes down? So how, if you take a weekly backup, your data that you're going to lose is a week, right? Because you're going back to that backup. And your recovery time objective is how long can I be out? What is acceptable, you know, in case of a disaster or adverse events? What is acceptable? How long can it be before I get back up? So for example, energy companies, they usually have like an SLA of 24 hours a year that they can be out. So you can calculate your recovery time objective based on that. And of course, you need to make some choices because if you have you know, a very high requirement for availability, that's going to cost, and that's going to be more complex to build. So you're talking about, and that's to the left upper right of this graph. So you're talking about a multi-site active system there. So multiple data centers, and they're active all of the time. Even cloud instances, if you spin up a machine in the cloud, you get to choose, you know, do I put it in one site or multiple sites, geo-redundant or not? And it's going to cost more. On the other end of the spectrum, you could say, you know, I just want to do a backup and restore. I'm just going to backup stuff, and when it breaks, I'm just going to restore. It's going to take longer than that, but that's okay. And I'm going to lose some data, but, you know, that's okay. But there's in between. You can also go for a strategy that is called pilot light. So it's just like your gas stove, if you will. There's a small light, so you do have all your machines there, but they're not turned on. And the minute you need them, poop, you spin them off. So that is still a reasonably cheap way to do things. But again, it depends on you know, what's acceptable as a recovery cost and what are you willing to put in there. Just be conscious of the choices that you make. And I would also want to say this is more of a business decision. So don't expect your IT person to figure out and make all of the right decisions, because he or she may not have all of the information available. He's just, you know, installing the software or making a database, and so you really need to sit together and talk about this. And so the IT side of things and the InfoSec side of things can make the correct decisions. So when you do this and you do go for a full-blown BCMS, a business continuity management system, so it's actively managing, it's all about continuous improvement. And you do that by implementing a plan, do, check cycle of continuous improvement. So you perform a business impact analysis. You say, you know, what would the consequences be of an outage of 2 hours or 1 day or 1 week or 1 month? How bad would that be? Right? So that is doing a business impact assessment. Check is internal audits. Your internal auditor can, you know, have a look, seeing whether the architecture and whether the choices made really make sense and it's actually being done as the policy dictates. And then give that feedback for improvements, and then implement corrective actions with the act. And then you plan again, and you keep making that cycle and improving. The same plan, do, check, act cycle of continuous improvement is being utilized for information security. So for an information security management system, you know, we need to plan stuff. What is the scope? Do we just apply this for, you know, one part of the organization or for the whole organization? And, you know, what are our stakeholders? What are our strategic objectives? Do we have, you know, alignment with the business strategy? What are our assets? How many servers do we have? How many, you know, virtual machines do we have? How many storage systems, backup systems, network nodes, firewalls, etc.? All of those kind of assets, where are they? Who's responsible for them, etc.? So what are the threats? What are the vulnerabilities? And we, you know, in the do cycle, we make plans for that. We, you know, do the RTP, the risk treatment plan. So, you know, if there's a risk for data breaches, you can implement multi-factor authentication or a web application firewall and those kind of technologies. So, so in the do cycle, you know, you do, and then you check, you know, audits, logging, monitoring, management reviews. You know, is this working effectively? Is it getting enough resources, enough attention? What, you know, how many incidents did we have? How long did they took to solve, and those kind of things. And then you act again. You know, take ownership, you fix non-conformities, and you go to the PDCA cycle again. Now, if you want to go for certification, that is something definitely the auditors will be looking at, seeing if you know, complete that cycle. So not only do you have MFA enabled, but is it being checked? Is it being improved? And is it being reviewed for effectiveness and then continuously improved? So an ISMS is really about identifying the risk, providing measures, so countermeasures, controls, and offer a plan of action in case of a threat to those assets, and also about responsibility. So that's a big advantage of, you know, doing this using a framework and doing it with, you know, a certification audit. It really forces your organizations to make it very clear who or what role is responsible, because I know from experience that a lot of stuff has gray area. So who's the owner of the application, and, you know, who manages the network, who manages the operating system, and who manages the application, and all of that stuff. So it really forces you to make that clear within your own organization. So we had a previous version was the 2013. Now we have the 2022, and that changed a bit. It added cybersecurity and privacy components to that. So the ISO 27000 is a whole family of standards. So you have telco-specific, cloud-specific, energy-specific standards. And I would highly encourage to get the one for your organization. obviously on top of the ISO 27001, the ISO 27002. So the 1 is the requirements, and the 2 is the guidelines for implementing the controls. And then those sector-specific would be on top of that for energy-specific sector. So, for example, for energy, that would be like, you know, having air gap networks for SCADA systems that cannot be reasonably secured via other means and things like that. For telco, it would be segregation in management networks and user traffic and those kind of things. Healthcare, you know, you have a lot of more privacy information and things like that. All of the standards there, you know, if you just Google for the ISO 27000, you'll get a lot of pages. You'll get a lot of garbage as well. So do make sure you go to the ISO.org and the 27000, which is the overview and vocabulary, is free to download. And, you know, I've put here a free download link, but of course, watch out for those phishing links. This is really, if you get it for free somewhere, it's illegal and probably booby-trapped with a Trojan or whatnot. So just spend the $200. That's what they cost, between 150 and $300. And that's the only income the standard institution has. So you also support that work by buying those documentation. And it's really worth it. If you think about it, how many people and organizations and standard institutes thought about every word in these kind of documents, how many experts were involved, and then for $200 you can get all that and just, you know, use it. So don't reinvent the wheel. The wheel's already there. So an ISMS is really about you know, managing risk, managing information security. And in the new standards, they incorporated cybersecurity concepts as well. So identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. So whenever you have a control, they'll map it to one of these. And for those that are familiar with cybersecurity, this of course comes from the NIST, the American Cybersecurity, or the American Institute of Standards. And the funny thing is that the NIST cybersecurity framework, they used to have identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. Now in the new 2.0, they added govern. So you see they're moving closer to the ISO, and the ISO is moving closer to the NIST. So both are fine frameworks. One is more for, you know, US government entities, and the other is more international character. So again, it's about controls, countermeasures. You see here a plane employing countermeasures to you know, deviate from a surface to air missile. With heat-seeking missiles, it will, you know, try to evade that attack. And the same thing we do with controls, and they can be technical controls, physical controls, people controls, and organizational controls. So organizational controls, policies, roles, responsibilities, access rights, those kind of things. Physical controls, you know, gates, cameras, cabling security, things like that. Often overlooked, but very important. Whenever we can touch a device, we can compromise it. So it doesn't matter if it have a password on it, we'll just, you know, reboot it, reset it. If you can physically touch a device, you can reset it. And that also counts for those management consoles, those iDRAC or ILO interfaces of those servers. And if you can get your hand on those, you can, you know, reset any root or admin credential on those servers. That it also counts for firewalls. So be very aware of that. So that brings us to the technological controls, you know, the endpoint devices, data masking, data leakage preventions, and all of those things. So yeah, there's a lot to do. There's actually 93 controls, but the standard really helps you with those and gives you guidelines on how to do that. And which ones you pick and which ones you pick first, that depends on your risk assessment. Do a risk assessment and see, you know, what controls are needed for my top risks and start with those, right? So there's also some new controls in the new standard. they want to see threat intelligence, monitoring activities, DLP, data leakage preventage, web filtering is new, but also, information security for the use of cloud services. It was released just before the big AI, I would say, hype. But using this will also, secure any AI is just a form of processing information often in the cloud. So if you look at, for example, monitoring activities, it says, network systems application shall be monitored for anomalous behavior. So we're talking about behavior. So what is normal behavior? What is abnormal behavior? So sending an email at 3 a.m. in the morning in Russian, that's probably not normal behavior. So that should be flagged and that should be stopped. So behavioral analytics becomes important. Web filtering. So just, firewall, not just to not be able to, visit weird sites, but also your computers, whenever they get infected, they try to connect to command and control infrastructure. And by using web filtering, that can also be blocked. So that will help you there. Threat intel, that's a new control. So, that's information relating to security threats. You need to collect that, analyze that, and, produce some actionable things from that. An example there is a firewall that, every minute will collect information from, for example, FortiGuard or other sources, and it will continuously update itself for ongoing attacks that it just learned about recently. So I'm not going to go into detail of all of this, but suffice to say that this really helps you. Data masking. That's often required for financial institutions. Credit card information should not be, unmasked or unencrypted on your systems. So it is kind of a paper exercise. So it is quite some work to do this. It usually takes about, something from 8 months to 2 years, depending on the maturity of your organization and the resources and the help you can get from expert support. So the mandatory documents to go for certification, you need to scope, you need a policy, you need to do your risk assessments, your statement of applicability. So that means that you need to make a statement about which controls have you selected from those 93 controls and which one have you implemented. So that goes in your risk treatment plan. How do you plan to go about your risks? And you need to assess them and treat them. Inventory of assets, that you should have that. You should know what you have. The acceptable use of those, can your kid at home play with your company computer or not? Can you connect to unsafe Wi-Fi's or, can you use your own phone on your corporate network or not? Those kind of things. And the list goes on. So there's not, it's quite some work, but it's not, impossible to achieve either. So a lot of organizations have achieved this. We've done several tracks, certification tracks for companies in the past. And sometimes we help with internal audits of companies that are busy with that and don't have an internal auditor themselves. There is some mandatory documentation you need to make, but it's really worthwhile to do that because it forces you to do it well. An example, a very recent example. So a couple of weeks back, all of the governors in the US, got an emergency important letter that cyber attacks are striking water and wastewater systems throughout the United States. There are a couple of threat actors mentioned, the People's Republic of China, Iran. This is happening a lot, and it's more and more targeting OT systems as well. So operational technology, industrial control systems, which are more often than not nowadays controlled by IT systems. So they send out this, warning, and the CISA, which is the US government's, cybersecurity arm, They sent, you know, all of these plans, you know, make sure you change all of your default passwords on your PLCs, your programming logic controllers, your HMIs, your human machine interfaces, and don't use the default password of 1111. So that says a lot, doesn't it? So a lot of industrial control systems are very simple and still use default credentials. So it's very easy to hack into that. If you get access to that in that network, you can pretty much take it over very, very easily. So, you know, require MFA, implement the firewall, VPN, back up all of the logic, all of the configurations. They really sent this out. You know, use a different port if needed. And when I was reading that, I was like, really, you know, if these organizations, you know, had a look at these standards that are available, and if they, you know, went through that, all of this should already be done. You should not have a 1111 as a password. The standard is very clear on that you should always change the default credentials, that you should segment networks, etc. So I found this well, not surprising, but you know, odd that it's still at this level. Even though, you know, there's a lot of tension in the world, there's a lot of cyber attacks going on, and just recently, President of the United States, you know, said that the magnitude of Russia's cyber capability is very consequential, and it's coming, and it's targeting U.S. critical infrastructure. And you know, I've dealt with many hacks, and I can tell you it's not just U.S. It's in the Caribbean, it's in Latin America, it's all over the place. There's kind of a silent, you know, war going on in cyberspace. So how do you get started with all of this, right? So how do you go about it? So an implementation plan would look like this. You know, first of all, get management support, get your CEO involved, get your board involved, explain it to them why it's important, what it would take, what it would mean, identify the requirements, you know, agree on a scope, do a formal risk assessment, you know, define and agree on the controls that you're gonna implement from the standard. If you can and they are acceptable, accept the residual risk, the remaining risk after those controls. If they're not acceptable yet, you know, transfer them, get an insurance, or apply more controls to them. Do some internal audits, do some reviews. Audits are a good thing. I know they're difficult and they're not always fun, especially if you're being audited, but they serve a common goal of improving things, right? And then you can go for what they call a stage 1 certification audit, which is the check of all the documentation. And then the stage 2 is checking all of the controls and how it is working, right? So at Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, we have a team of you know, information security governance consultants, and we do this a lot. So we see many pitfalls. So a lot of times it's a great idea from, you know, somebody in IT or an engineer or an architect, or and it's a great idea, but they don't have the leadership buy-in. The leadership is not on board or doesn't understand it, or it's not a priority. And it's not just for IT, it's for the whole organization. So make sure that leadership understands and backs you up. And the best way to do that is to provide budget. If a CEO finds something very important, he should invest in it. If he says or she says that it's very important, but it can't cost a penny, then it's not important. And then you should talk about that. So make sure you have the knowledge on board. If you don't have the knowledge internally, you know, there's a lot of courses available, but also, you know, talk to a professional, and that can save you a lot of time and effort and money, because, for example, we do this all the time, so we don't have to start from scratch. We take already, you know, what works and adapt that. So a blame culture, and, you know, this is about continuous improvement, not about blaming, you know, he didn't do that or that team should do that. Also, don't overcomplicate things. Just, you know, make sure it fits whatever you're doing already and improve on that, instead of taking templates from a consultant and then start filling in those templates, or a tool that you bought online that promises to do this in 3 days. That usually, you know, doesn't work. I mean, a lot of times we come in when organizations did that, and somehow they're surprised that they didn't make the audit, or the organization is not doing it, even though it's the policy. Nobody's listening to me. So that is a common pitfall that you see. And make sure that it's a company culture fit. So every company has its own culture. A tech startup, Silicon Valley startup, is very different from a central bank, is very different from a telco, is very different from a power plant. So make sure that it fits your organization. You don't want to be overly strict in a very informal environment, and vice versa, right? So, and as a last tip, make sure you split policies, standards, procedures, and guidelines. So policies, high-level management intent. Using an 8-character password is not a policy, right? That's a standard. That's how you do things. And creating a user by doing these 5 steps, that's a procedure. So more often than not, we see organizations trying to do this and then making all the documentation, making one big HR handbook that everybody should follow. And it's a 150-page document that is always outdated because it's mixing policy with procedures. So try to do that separately. And if you do that well, you can really help your customers connect with confidence. To end up, because if I look at the time, let's get back to the interactive session and see if we can answer some questions and see if you learned anything, right? So again, go to menti.com if you please, and put in the code. So that is 15672654. That's pretty clear. Or is it? Yes, business continuity management system, of course. This was a very, very easy one. So we got more hits there. So it's not a baseline configuration. It's not a borderline creative. That was a very easy one. So what is an ISMS? Results coming in. Well, I'm glad to see that. So people were paying attention. Well, one person was not completely paying attention, maybe doing some emails while the Zoom was on mute. So it's definitely an information security management system, right? Identity and security, definitely important. You have some software, some tools for that. Now, this is more of an open question. So just be honest. Again, this is anonymous. So there's a lot of people joining, and not all organizations are certified or even started with this yet. So then that's okay. Every organization is on its own journey. So how mature is your ISMS or BCMS? Work in progress, infancy? That's all right. Most of them are in infancy, or a lot of them don't even start it yet. Halfway, that's good. Halfway, yeah. Adult, yeah. So compliant, yeah. And does compliant also mean certified? Do we have any certified? Certified, yeah. Okay, congratulations. That's a nice, nice achievement. Yeah. So a certification would be for 3 years, and they do, a small check yearly, and then after 3 years you certify again. It needs attention. Good. That's why we're here. So try to give it attention. So as you can see, there's many organizations that are very different in this, and that's all right. It's about continuous improvement. Even if you're already certified, there's still a lot to improve all of the time. That brings us to the Ask Me Anything session. So we are accepting questions from the audience. If you can do it in here, that's great. I believe you can then vote on questions. I'll try to answer them to the best of my abilities. I don't know everything, but you know, me and my colleagues at the Cybersecurity Center, we do a lot of these implementations. So
there is a question in the chat.
All right.
It goes, cybersecurity and BCP initiatives require investments. How can a company demonstrate that the return on investment for these initiatives to secure leadership buy-in?
That's actually a very good question. And a tip there is whenever you talk to leadership about this, don't use the FUD method, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So don't start with, ransomware, we're all going to die, so we need to buy this. You'll get their attention, but the next day it didn't happen. The next day it didn't happen. And then they say, yeah, well, it's very important, but it's not urgent. So that gets postponed. So that's not a very good strategy to get there. It is actually a very good strategy to look at the risk, quantify it. So try to look at the single loss expectancy. See what one major event, take ransomware as an example, what a full-blown ransomware takes backups out, what would that cost, that single event? And then have a sober look at your infrastructure and how you are working and say, what are the chances of this happening? So is this like 1 in 100 years chance? Is this 1 in 5 years chance? Is this 1 in 10 years chance? So for example, if you have let's say a medium-sized telco in the Caribbean, a ransomware attack could, take you out and cost you anything like, $50 million or something like that. If it's a 1 in 10 chance, one time in 10 years, you will have that. And then you're already in a good position in terms of measures that you already have in place. That means there's a 10% chance of an impact of 50 million. That's a 5 million cost of risk that you have every year. Now, by doing this, you could maybe halve the risks. It's still going to be some risk. It's still going to be, there's not 100% security. But it may halve the risk. So you go from $5 million risk to $2.5 million by investing maybe $100,000, $200,000. And that's a tremendous return on investment. So I would go about it like that. And I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you. We have another one on the screen.
Yeah, is there available data on security breaches of ISO certified companies? Good question. Now, an ISO certified company is not bulletproof, so it's not a guarantee that nothing ever will happen. As you may know, you can write a beautiful piece of policy, but hackers don't care about that. But a well-managed company that takes a look at their top risk and acts on that and has clear responsibility to resolve those and treat those is in a much, much better position. And I would, put my money every day in a bank that's certified than a bank that is not. Now, banks usually, have other standards that they use from the payment card industry, but if there's a list, there's many information. So Verizon, for example, Verizon every year makes an internet security report. There's a lot of data out there. And there is also a list out there. Maybe I could show it. If you Google data breaches, beautiful, I believe. Information is beautiful. You can actually see there's a visualization out there for all of the well-known data breaches. And as you can see, Microsoft's probably certified. Twitter, T-Mobile, LastPass. So this is a compilation of known data breaches. So not all companies need to report. So for example, in Aruba, we don't have mandatory reporting as they do have in the EU, for example. So a lot of things might go unreported. So MGM, have a look at this. It's a nice compilation. Definitely is not everything, but it is a nice resource to have a look at. Yeah. Any other questions? Do we have any other questions in the chat that I may have missed?
No, I don't see any.
Okay, let me see.
I see one out of two on your screen. Does that mean is there not a question on your screen, or?
Let's see. Yes, it does mean that. Thank you very much. Yeah. So what factors should a company consider when designing a data backup and recovery strategy that aligns with their cybersecurity posture? Again, going back to that recovery time objective. So how long, can you take to bring those backups back? So a weekly backup would take longer than a daily backup. You also have incremental backup. So you take one big weekly backup, and then every day you take an incremental one. If you need to restore that, that means you need to restore the full backup first and all of those days of incrementals, which takes longer. If you want to speed that up, you can take a full backup every day or every hour if you can afford it. So that drastically speeds off recovery time, and you can test that regularly. You can automate that, but that all comes with a cost. So I would say the two main factors would be recovery time objective and recovery point objectives. How much data can I lose? So transactional systems can't lose any data. So you not only need to put up the backup back, but you need to apply all those transactions that happened since the backup recovery and since the outage. So I would say RTO and RPO. Let's go to the next one. Which version of the ISO standards would you recommend for a telecom regulator? The general one. So yeah, if we go back to that slide, I believe we had a slide on the family of standards. Yeah, is this one. So I would recommend the 27001. Definitely, that's the ISMS requirements. The 27002 would be the controls, and then you have sector-specific controls. So that would be the 27011, 27011. So the 27011. Yeah. And I believe we're through with the questions, unless anybody else wants to ask anything.
If I look at the time, then I think that would be considered the last question, Paul. For me, a very insightful presentation. I also like the fact that you made it very interactive with Menti. I liked it that sometimes when you're in these sessions, people do not always talk, but it was nice that we could just chat it to you, really into the generation that we're now, technology. So I like that. I like that about how you brought it. Paul, I'm really, really thanking you for this presentation, but I'm asking for the people in the web session not to leave us yet, because I have a few announcements that I want to make. The first one is with regards to CANTO's annual conference and trade exhibition scheduled on July the 7th and the 10th at GW Marriott, Turnberry and Spa, Miami, Florida. If you haven't made your arrangements as yet, I think you still have the opportunity to do so. It is a very promising and eventful gathering of industry leaders, experts, and innovators. You really get the chance to network with a lot of people from various countries. You also know that because we are, most of us are CANTO members. So please do use this time to still register and sign up and get your preparations in order for the upcoming CANTO annual conference. Secondly, the CANTO conversations need to be going on. So our next CANTO conversation will be on Thursday, May 16th at 10 a.m. And the speaker for that session will be the CEO of LACNIC, Mr. Oscar Robles, and he will be presenting IPv6 for decision makers, more connected people, smarter systems, and more secure internet. Yes. Those are the two announcements, a few takeaways that I have from the session of Paul. We talked about information security management, business continuity management. He said a very nice thing. The wheel already has been invented, so you don't need to reinvent the wheel. It is not an individual decision. It is not an IT decision. It's a management or a leadership decision. Because when you get certified, you need to look into important things as the assets that you have, the stakeholders that you have, and so on. And I liked I think it was one of the questions. ISO is not bulletproof, but it does give you a guideline how to handle if things may go wrong. Second, once again, I'd like to extend our sincere gratitude to Mr. Paul Eelens for engaging us with this valuable presentation. We appreciate your time and expertise. And for all members joining us, thank you all for being a part of today's CANTO conversation. We look forward to seeing you at CANTO 2024 in July and at the next CANTO conversation. Have a wonderful day and stay connected.
Thank you very much.